In the ModelRockets.us Centauri kit, you'll have a body tube, a bag of small parts, a nose cone, a parachute kit, and a set of instructions. In the small parts bag, there'll be a balsa sheet with the 3 fins, a decal set, a motor tube, a shock cord set, 2 centering rings, a thrust ring, a launch lug, and a motor hook. The shock cord and motor mount assembly. In the shock cord and motor mount assembly, there is the motor hook, the motor tube, which has a pre-cut slot, also marks that are engraved to locate the centering rings, 2 centering rings, a thrust ring, and the shock cord, which has an elastic shock cord and a Kevlar shock cord, which is heat resistant. First thing we're going to do is tie the white elastic shock cord to the Kevlar shock cord. Do this with 1 overhand knot, holding both together. Loop it through and pull it tight. Like so. On the yellow end of the shock cord, the Kevlar end, in the very end of it, tie 1 single knot, like so. Take the centering rings and open them up using a nose cone. Put that side down. We're just opening them up a little bit to make them slide on the motor tube easier. Take the motor hook and place it the right angled end into the slot on the motor tube. Take your first centering ring and place it over the tube and the motor hook on the hook end. Slide it part way on, but not all the way on, short of the 2 marks that locate the centering ring. Then take your Kevlar end of the shock cord with the knot, pass it through the centering ring, and put both the centering ring and the Kevlar shock cord slide over the tube, motor tube, short of the mark, indicating where the centering will finally be located. Now take your glue and put a bead of glue around the marks and slide the shock cord over the glue in the tube until it is between the marks or lines on the tube. You can pull your shock cord now tight. Then take the glue and do this for the second centering ring. Put a bead around the tube between the marks on the tube and slide the centering ring over the tube until you reach the marks on the tube. Then take and put a bead of glue around the inside of the end of the motor tube opposite the motor hook end, and push in your thrust ring until it is flush with the end of the motor tube. This is a completed motor mount with shock cord attached. Once your motor mount is assembled, we can insert it in the SIA tube. Take your shock cord and put it through the top or the front side of the motor mount at the thrust ring end and pull it through. Then take your tube and about 1.5 inches to 2 inches in, put a bead of glue all around the perimeter of the inside of the tube, like so. Then take your motor mount and line up the motor hook end with your launch lug line on your tube, and push it in all the way until it is flush with the bottom of the tube. If there's any glue in the slots, clear them, because later we'll be putting our fins in these slots. Now the motor hook should be lined up with the launch lug line on the same side. Insert your shock cord in the bottom end and drop it all the way down through the body tube out the other end and pull it in. Pull it through, like so. Take your fins and remove them from the balsa sheet. You can take your fins and you can sand them on the front and at the tip, sand them round. But it's not necessary if you're going to fly this rocket in a short period of time and you're not going to finish it. You don't need to do any sanding on the fins whatsoever. The rocket will still fly. Take your first fin and put a bead of glue on the root edge, like so, and then insert this in the slot on your tube. Line up so that the fin is lined up with the center line on your tube. Do the same for your second and third fins. Like so. You notice that the fins are 120 degrees apart. And just check your fins to make sure each of the fins are equally spaced around the tube, going through the center line of the tube and 120 degrees apart or equal distance from each other at the tips. take the body tube, and you'll notice that there is a line marked for the launch lug. Put a bead of glue, small bead of glue, directly on that line. Take and attach your launch lug. And then carefully position the launch lug so it lines up with the center line of your tube, this way. Check your fins so that they're 120 degrees apart. Then set aside to dry. Now that the fins in your launch lug are dry, we're going to fillet them. Take and put a bead of glue between the joint of the fin and the body tube in all places where the fins meet the body tube, 6 places. And also a bead, small bead, between the launch lug and the body tube. Then with your fingers, smooth the glue between the launch lug and the body tube, like so, creating a fillet. Do so for all the fins as well. This fillet adds a lot of strength. And set aside to dry. ModelRockets.us 12-inch parachute assembly. In the parachute bag, you have one folded parachute, a shroud line, and tape discs. There are 6 individual tape discs on this strip. First step is we're going to cut out the parachute. Take scissors and cut along the dotted line at the edge of the printed parachute. There are 6 sides to the parachute. Now that the parachute is cut out, we're going to apply the tape disc to each of the locations around the perimeter of the parachute, where it's indicated by the drawing on the edge. Peel back each tape disc and apply it right over the circle drawn on the parachute. Now take a toothpick and punch through the holes in the tape discs. In 6 places, right in the center. The shroud line is one long piece that we need to divide into 3 pieces. Unravel the shroud line, make sure that it's not tangled, and then grab each end. Put each end in the opposite finger of your hands, like this. See, they're crossed over, and then put your fingers on the inside of the loop and pull and stretch it out until you have 3 equal lengths. Take one end where the 3 lengths are and cut them all the same length. Then, while holding them on that end, string the shroud lines through your fingers, making sure that they stay together until you get to the other end, and then clip off the ends of the shroud lines to make them equal length. And now we have 3 equal length shroud lines. Take one end of one shroud line and put it through the hole you punched in the tape disc of the parachute. And tie a knot twice make sure the knots are secure. Do not pull too hard or you can pull it out of the parachute. Take the next tape disc right next to the one you just tied and tie the other end of the same shock cord through. Pass it through and tie again 2 knots. Pull the knot tight and check to see if it's secure by holding the string. Do not pull it out of the parachute. Take another shroud line and go right next to the one that you just tied. You have one loop to 2 tape discs side by side. Now we're going to make another loop to these 2. So we'll start with this one. We'll tie a double knot again. Checking to make sure it's tight. And then the next one with this second shroud line. And again a double knot. Check to make sure the knot is tight. The third shroud line, now that we have 2 separate loops of shroud lines, we'll make the last loop. Take the last shroud line and tie it next next to the one you just finished. Tie a double knot. Pull it, make sure it's secure, and then right next to it on the final tape disc, without a shroud line, pass it through and do this again. A double knot. Pull it tight. Do not pull too hard, you pull through the parachute. Now we have 3 loops of shroud lines, 3 separate loops of shroud lines. To get the parachute to be equal length, when the shroud lines are pulled tight while it's during flying and recovery, the best way is to fold your parachute in half and fold it in a quarter. And then bring the shroud lines and match them up so they're all approximately on top of each other in the same place, with the center of the parachute at this peak. Now we can just pull the shroud lines, pull them all to the same length, and you see we have 3 loops here, and they're all about the same length. But if we tie a knot here while we're holding it, we can make sure the shroud lines are all the same length. Now when we pull the parachute and during recovery, the chute will open up correctly and all the shroud lines are the proper length. That's parachute assembly. Now that the fillets on the rocket are dry, we're going to attach our nose cone and parachute that we assembled earlier. Take your nose cone and tie it to your shock cord with 2 overhand knots. First one, second knot, and then pull it tight to check that it's tight. The parachute we assembled earlier can be tied directly to the nose cone in the same manner as the shock cord. Just pull it through and tie 2 knots. And check to make sure that it's tight. Our rocket is now assembled and ready to fly, but we'll show you how to pack the parachute in. Normally you want chute wadding in here, but as we may put decals on or do other things to the rocket now, we're not going to fly it. We're going to just pack the parachute inside without the parachute wadding. Take your parachute and fold it until it's about folded 4 times or 1/8 wide. And then fold your parachute over once more and another time, and then roll it up. Now roll the shrouds on rather than twist. Don't twist, but roll instead. That keeps the shrouds from getting tangled. Then you can insert it in. And insert all your shock cord. At this point, you can decorate your rocket or finish it. In the instructions, there's instructions on how to use sanding sealer and sandpaper to round your edges and seal your fins, and as well as how to spray paint. And then you can apply your decal sheet. But the rocket can be flown as is now without any finishing.